My parents disowned me at my sister's graduation, but lost it. When I revealed the truth at my sister's graduation, my parents disowned me, then lost it when I revealed their secret. My name is Emily, and at my sister's Harvard graduation, my parents stood center stage and cut me off. No warning, no context. They beamed at her. They blanked me. No name on the invitation. Not in the program. Not in the family. But what they didn't know was, I already knew. The hidden inheritance. The forged signatures. The house, sold without a word. In the end, it wasn't them who unmasked me. I unmasked them. But first, where are you tuning in from? And what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. I showed up early. Not because I was eager. I just needed to see if they'd actually done it. Made the cut. Real. The sun poured over Harvard Yard like applause, shining on everyone but me. Grads buzzed in black robes, laughter bouncing through the gates. Parents clutched roses, bags, programs with gold lettering. I held nothing but breath. When I spotted my parents in the reserved section, I slowed. My mother, Astria, wore sky blue and her signature tight-lipped smile. My father, Everett, blazer slung on his arm, scrolled his phone while his foot tapped. The grass. Callista stood between them, radiant in her gown, sash, and stacked honor cords, Harvard's perfect prodigy. They didn't notice me at first. When they did, my mother's eyes barely grazed me, like I was someone she faintly recalled from a long-ago luncheon. "Oh, Emily," she said, like the name was foreign. "You came." "I got the invitation," I replied, ignoring the chill in her tone. She gave a humorless laugh. "Must have been forwarded. I didn't think the RSVP got that far." My father said nothing, just checked his watch. Callista offered a quick hug. I leaned in, automatic. "You look amazing," I said. "Thanks," she murmured, soft, almost sorry. "I'm glad you're here." But her eyes kept flicking sideways, monitoring Mom, always measuring how much warmth was safe. By the gate, a wooden easel held the seating chart. "The Caldwell family," it said in bold script. Underneath, Everett, Astria, Callista, plus 2 guests. I scanned for my name. It wasn't there. Someone handed me a badge. White. Plain. No crest, no ribbon. Just guest in Times New Roman. I stared at it. I had helped design that crest 2 decades ago. Mom and I spent a whole week on the font. I should have walked away. That would have been sane. But instead, I clipped the badge to my blazer and stepped into the tent, like a ghost at her own funeral. At 11:03 sharp, the ceremony began. Speakers. Past, professors, trustees. I sat alone in the far left section beside a dozing elderly man and a toddler scribbling with a crayon. Then Everett stepped up to the mic. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, smiled like a politician unveiling policy. "Today," he said, "we honor the brilliance and devotion of our eldest daughter, Callista. Her journey has been nothing short of remarkable." Polite applause. Cameras clicked. Callista lowered her eyes, demure. But he kept going. "This day also marks a turning point for our family, a necessary shift in energy, values, and focus." My stomach sank. "We've made a difficult decision. From this day forward, we will no longer be extending ourselves to those who do not align with the integrity and vision we hold." A pause. "That includes our youngest daughter, Emily." Silence. No gasp, no protest, just the shuffle of fabric, a few uncomfortable coughs. I didn't move, didn't cry. Sat still, hands pressed flat against my knees. Every nerve ending suddenly lit up like a warning flare. My ears buzzed. I stared at the sharp edge of the stage. Callista said nothing. Someone behind me whispered, "Did he just say?" Another voice hushed. "Who does that at a graduation?" I swallowed, turned my face just slightly from the stage, kept my jaw clenched. He kept talking. Something about investments, future, roots and weeds. The words blurred. Eventually, I stood. Didn't rush, didn't stumble, just walked out, calm, deliberate, like I'd rehearsed it. At the reception, I looked for my seat. A table marked Caldwell and guests. I walked over, scanned the name cards. Nothing. Callista's was there. So was Aunt Miriam's. Even her college roommate, but not mine. A girl I barely remembered from middle school glanced up from a nearby table. "Oh, hey, I thought you weren't coming. Your mom said it was a closed family celebration." She added a little too brightly, something about keeping the focus clear. Then smiled, awkward, unsure if it was as cruel as it sounded. On the table, I noticed a folded ivory card. I opened it. "Congratulations to our only daughter, Callista. With all our love, Mom and Dad." That was the moment. Something in me shifted, not snapped, not broke, just tilted. A woman in a floral dress brushed past, glanced at my chest, and said, "You must be with the catering team. You're not wearing the family pin." I looked down. Badge, guest. No name, no title. And in my head, I heard it. Not even a name. Tag. Just a ghost badge. That's what I am to them now. So I smiled, said nothing, picked a glass of Prosecco off a tray, and walked toward the back exit. I didn't head home right away. I wandered past packed cafes, all filled with graduation. Brunches, past laughing families, past a little girl holding a balloon that read Harvard Strong. Not until the sun dropped behind the red brick skyline did I finally board the T and let the city carry me back to my small apartment in Somerville. I climbed the stairs, kicked off my shoes, paused. The silence was familiar, like a worn sweater I couldn't quite part with. I tossed the program onto the kitchen counter. It didn't land flat, its pages fanned open, and there they were, my parents, Callista, all smiling. Caption: "Proud moment for the Caldwell family. No trace of me." That night, I sat cross-legged on the rug, an old yearbook spread open on my lap. Callista's high school graduation, 10 years ago. I remembered what Mom had said back then. "Don't bother showing up. Day either." "It's not your moment," she'd said. The page with the family tribute caught my eye. One of those custom back-page yearbook ads. "To the daughter who never gave up. We are so proud of you, Callista." A single photo. My parents and Callista, standing on our front porch in spring. I remembered that photo. I'd been in it. I'd stood right next to her in that exact spot, wearing a dress Mom had picked. I remembered because she yelled at me, furious over a wrinkle across the waist. But in this version, I was gone, cropped out, cleanly. I touched the page's edge, stared until my eyes blurred. They didn't forget me. They erased me. The next morning, sunlight woke me, and a stiff neck. I had fallen asleep on the floor, curled around a pillow, the yearbook, beside me like some haunted diary. I stood, got dressed for work. At the nonprofit where I managed donor relations, no one said a word. Of course not. Why would they? The Caldwells had always kept their image spotless. And I never really spoke about them. Around 10, while I was pouring coffee number 2, Rachel, a junior analyst, wandered in. "Hey," she said casually, "I saw pics on social last night. Your sister's graduation looked amazing. That red dress. Stunning." I turned, careful not to spill. "She always looks the part," I said. Then with a small smile, "I was there, just in the shadows, like always." Rachel didn't catch the edge in my voice. She laughed. "You're mysterious like that." Mysterious. That's one word for it. Back at my desk, I passed a coworker I knew had played golf with my father once. He nodded politely. Didn't ask how I was. A woman I used to babysit for looked away as I walked by, pretending to search her purse. They weren't being cruel, just choosing not to see. I sat, opened my inbox. My own reflection hovered faintly in the screen. What kind of family invites you just to disown you publicly? That line looped in my head like a song lyric I couldn't stop humming. Worse, what kind of daughter still shows up hoping it might be different? I hated it. how badly I wanted them to change their minds, how tightly I'd clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they were still my family. I glanced at my drawer. Stacked inside, old birthday cards addressed to our daughters, family newsletters, my name shoved in a corner like a footnote, the holiday card they sent to donors that only featured Callista's photo. They'd called it a branding choice. It was never just one moment. It was thousands, tiny cuts I'd ignored, until now. Because the night before, when I slipped out of that reception tent, I didn't leave empty-handed. I took the envelope, the ivory one, gold-foiled letters, handwritten message, to our only daughter, Callista. I slid it into my purse, smooth, unnoticed. Ghosts don't knock things over, they just remove. At home, I placed it in a shoebox beneath my bed, alongside other things they never meant for me to keep. That night, I didn't cry. I got quiet, and then I started digging. The rain began just after midnight. Soft, like a guest too polite to knock, just tapping gently at the kitchen window. Wrapped in a blanket, my laptop open, casting a pale blue glow. I hadn't moved in hours. I had made a choice to stop crying. So I did. I clicked through folders I hadn't touched in years. There was still a shared drive connected to my old email, left over from when I did part-time accounting for the family foundation. They'd never revoked access. I was the one who set it up. Typical. They delete people with silence, not passwords. At first, I clicked through randomly. Old tax docs, donations, board meeting notes. Then something clicked, a folder, holdings updated, inside, a PDF, transfer authorization, seaside property, finale. Opened it. My name, my full legal name, typed above a signature, almost mine. But not quite. The S was flatter. The loop on the L too wide, a bad copy, but notarized. And there in the margin, Savannah Caldwell. My cousin, of course. I yanked an old lease agreement from my drawer, put them side by side, no match. Not even close. It hit me. This wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. They didn't just cut me out of a speech, they forged my name. To erase my share of the only thing Dad ever left me, a piece of the Cape Elizabeth beach house, the one I helped repaint during college, the one Callista used for her 30th. A small gathering that became a bonfire for 50. I closed the laptop. Slow. Like sealing a casket. I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I called the only person who ever listened. Aunt Mavis. She answered with a pause, then her raspy voice. So, Len, honey, you okay? Not really. My voice cracked. I found a property transfer. With my name, but not my signature. Silence. Then, oh. So, Len, she whispered. You saw it, didn't you? I didn't know what to do, she confessed. Your mama said it was just paperwork, something about taxes, cleaning up the books. I slid to the floor, back against the kitchen wall. You knew they were moving me off the deed. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that they'd tell you later. I'm sorry. I should have said something, her voice cracked. Old guilt rising. You know how your mother gets. And your father? He just follows. That sentence hung like smoke. You know how your mother gets. Like she was a storm you couldn't stop. Only survive. I'm tired of making excuses for them, Aunt Mavis. I know, baby, she said softly. I know. We sat in silence, just breathing, listening to the rain. By dawn, my resolve had set like concrete. I made coffee, sat at the dining table, legal pads, highlighters, the old laptop. This wasn't about a house or a photo. It was the pattern. The way every time something mattered, really mattered, they found a way to uninvite me. Family holidays from the house I painted myself into. But now, they were going to remember exactly who I was. Not because I'd beg for a seat at their table again, because I'd be the one flipping the table over. By mid-morning, the clouds had started to lift outside, but the weight in my chest only grew heavier. I hadn't slept, just worked, through the night, cross-referencing, checking deed numbers, combing through local property registries like a woman possessed. The soft hum of my space heater filled the silence. My coffee sat cold beside me. Then I saw it. Bar Harbor, Main Parcel ID 00174426, the family vacation house. The cedar-shingled one with the rocking chairs on the porch. The one my grandmother left to the Caldwell Family Trust. Status: sold buyer, Harlow Holdings. LLC. Clicked the name. Harlow Holdings didn't even try to hide. The registered agent, a Boston business attorney, the same one Callista posted about on LinkedIn 6 weeks ago. They didn't transfer it, they sold it. No notice, no discussion, no family meeting, just a silent surgical erasure, like I'd never been a beneficiary. Like I hadn't spent childhood summers painting shutters, sanding rails, rinsing sea salt from my knees while Dad grilled salmon on the deck. And now? It was funding Callista's boutique firm, her website tagline, legacy-minded investing, inspired by family values. My grandmother would have been horrified. I closed the browser. My hands trembled. Not from fear. From violation. That was the word. Not grief. Not heartbreak. Violation. I needed air. Threw on a coat. Walked to the bookstore 3 blocks away, hoping motion would quiet my thoughts. I wasn't there to shop, just to breathe without a screen glowing in my face. But fate had other plans. Just as I turned into the self-help aisle, I heard her, Emily. I turned Mrs. Henderson, one of Mom's oldest friends, queen of potlucks and polished passive aggression. She was holding a book, aging gracefully through faith. Smiled, all teeth, like she didn't realize they were knives. Darling, I heard. Callista's doing so well. Your mother says she's expanding into luxury real estate. Isn't that just wonderful? I nodded politely. Yeah. Funny, I thought that house was still ours. Her expression shifted, barely. A flicker. Recognition, like she knew she'd said too much. Oh, I mean, I don't know all the details. You know how parents are. Always making moves without their kids, are they? I asked, eyes steady. She didn't answer, just smiled again. That same practiced smile I'd seen at every holiday dinner, the one that said, "Don't make a scene, sweetheart." I walked out, without another word. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed. A text from an old college roommate. Someone completely out of the loop. Heard your folks sold the summer house. Callista's killing it. Jealous of her life right now. Jealous. That word sat on my tongue like vinegar. People envied her. Because they didn't know what it cost. The silence she stepped on to shine. This wasn't just business. It was abandonment. In 1,000 quiet, well-dressed ways. It was being photoshopped out of family pictures. Erased from legacy. Like I'd never mattered. So I did the only thing that made sense. I changed clothes, printed the deed documents, packed a bag, because some answers don't live in inboxes. They sit behind frosted glass and rehearsed receptionist smiles, and I knew where to start. I parked across the street from my mother's office, stared at the tinted windows of the Caldwell Foundation, cold and watching. The last time I stood here, I was 16, holding my scholarship essay in printed form. Mom told me, "Come in quietly. Don't embarrass me in front of the board." I remembered. The dress, navy blue, too tight at the shoulders. We couldn't afford another. She said, "Smile. Stand still. Maybe they'll pick you for the summer program." I smiled. I stood still. They picked Callista's friend instead. Now, 15 years later, I wasn't here to impress anyone. I walked in without calling. The girl at the front desk, maybe an intern, gave a polite, hesitant smile. The kind reserved for people who might cause a scene. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. I didn't answer. My heels echoed down the hallway. Astria Caldwell didn't flinch when I entered. She looked up from her screen, not surprised at all. "So, Len," she said smoothly. Like we'd just had brunch yesterday. I'd like a few minutes. She gestured to the leather chair. I stayed standing. Her office looked the same: white orchids, award plaques, a framed headline, mother, philanthropist, visionary, all perfectly aligned. I half expected her to reach over and straighten it before we began. I regret that you felt hurt, she said, hands folded. But we did what was best for the family's image. There it was. The apology that wasn't. You don't regret what you did, I replied, voice level. You regret how it looked. She exhaled through her nose, soft, annoyed, like I was being dramatic. You're still welcome at events, just as a guest, not as a face of the Caldwell legacy. I hope you understand. It's about cohesion, simplicity. I tilted my head. You mean control? Her lips twitched. We can't have every branch growing in a different direction. People notice. I hope they do, I said, because I'm not bending back into shape just to fit your narrative. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. I already knew where she stood. Always behind Callista, in front of a camera, beside Dad when it made sense. That evening, I attended the gala. I'd RSVP'd 6 months ago, before the disowning, before the erasure. Back when I still believed I had a seat in their world, I wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy. But the name tag clipped to my coat read R, not Caldwell, not family. The ballroom buzzed with donors and well-dressed alumni. I stuck to the edges, scanning faces. I wasn't expecting warmth, but I wasn't prepared for how invisible I'd become. Small talk floated past me like perfume. Midway through dinner, a waiter handed out champagne. My father stood. He raised his glass. To our only daughter, Callista, whose brilliance continues to guide this family forward. I froze. A few heads turned toward me, then quickly looked away. My hand tightened around the stem of my glass. Even Callista blinked, visibly unsettled. But she didn't correct him. She just smiled and clinked her glass with the nearest donor. It didn't matter if she agreed. Silence served her just as well. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't speak, but something cracked deep inside. Clean and final. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was exile. Polished. Gift-wrapped. I left quietly before dessert. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. I walked 2 blocks before calling. A rideshare. As I sat in the back seat, the city lights blurred past. I replayed every word, every look, my mother's gentle scolding, my father's toast. The way Callista stood, just close enough to be admired, just far enough to stay clean. And I knew I wasn't going to wait for an apology or an explanation. They'd made their legacy without me. Now it was my turn. I didn't waste time sleeping. As soon as the sun broke through my blinds, I was already at my kitchen island. Laptop open, legal documents, financial ledgers, half-empty coffee cup sweating onto a coaster. Everything I needed was here. Not emotionally. Legally. I had spent the night reviewing contracts I was never meant to see, thanks to a shared cloud folder they forgot to revoke access to. I cross-referenced email threads, matched signatures, pulled metadata off PDFs. The trail wasn't obvious, but it was there. A real estate transaction that rerouted an inheritance. Trust disbursements that quietly bypassed me. A marketing memo listing the family image with only Callista's name and face. I slid the printed files into a velvet envelope, dark burgundy with gold trim. My mother gave it to me when I was 12, filled with stationery, sealed with a note. Always write with grace. Now it carried my first real reply. By 10, I was standing outside the office of my parents' longtime attorney, Warren Bell. The last time I saw him was at my grandmother's funeral. He greeted me like someone unsure whether to hug or call. Security. I need 2 minutes, I said flatly. Warren took the envelope carefully. I watched him scan the label. Typed, not handwritten. Then glance up. I'll have to review. There's a notarized affidavit, a trust challenge, and a digital link with voice recordings. The instructions are inside. He hesitated. I assume this comes with expectations? No, I said. It comes with consequences. I didn't wait for a response. Back in the elevator, my reflection stared at me in the chrome. I looked like someone who hadn't slept, but I felt more awake than I had in years. The voice recordings had taken months to gather. Quiet, patient moments, boardroom halls, car rides, awkward donor meetings. They never thought I'd still be listening. They assumed they'd worn me down, erased me by attrition. One clip played in my mind again, clear as day. Mom, in a charity lunch pre-brief. We only use Callista's face. Emily doesn't fit the image we're selling. Then Dad chuckling. She used to read everything. Well, I still did. Back at home, I finally sat down. Not at the table, on the floor. I stared at the old family photo still framed near my bookshelf. It was from before Callista's high school graduation. Before the edits, I'd kept it, knowing they'd someday pretend it didn't exist. It felt strange not to feel rage, not in this moment, not because I'd forgiven them, but because I'd made my move. I didn't send the envelope with malice. I sent it like a receipt, proof of transaction, proof that I existed, that I saw what they did, that I knew. I called my lawyer that night. I don't want revenge, I told him. But I won't let them use my silence as consent. If they're going to erase me, I want the record to show who held the pen. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Then it starts now." The next morning, I opened my laptop out of habit to check the news, but I didn't get the chance to send anything. My inbox was already exploding. I hadn't even made coffee when the messages started buzzing. 4 missed calls. 2 from blocked. Numbers. 1 from a reporter in DC. I ignored them all. Instead, I tapped the screen. Opened my browser. Front page. There it was, plastered across a national nonprofit watchdog site. Luxury charity, anonymous sources. Question integrity at the Caldwell Foundation. My throat clenched before I even read the subheader. It was real. The US article didn't name me, but it didn't have to. It referenced board documents, internal memos, direct quotes from emails, ones I knew intimately because I had printed them, read them, cried over them. The public didn't know it was me, but the foundation would. They'd always prided themselves on controlling the narrative. Now the story had slipped through their fingers, and for once I wasn't the one left out. Scrambled for damage control, Astria announced a family unity luncheon at her favorite club in Beacon Hill. From what I gathered, 2 board members showed up, out of obligation. Callista never arrived. I could almost hear my mother's voice cracking under forced grace. We're focusing on healing and moving forward. Translation, we're losing control and need to patch the boat before it sinks. But it was too late. Donors were asking questions about Bar Harbor, about the trust, about the forged signature. They weren't angry. They were done. At 10 p.m., I refreshed the news site again. A new photo had been added to the article. My mother exiting the foundation's building in her tailored blazer, but her lapel pin, the gold graduation crest she always wore, was missing. That tiny, gleaming symbol I once would have given anything to earn. Now, I sat alone in my apartment, cross-legged on the couch, laptop on my knees. The shadows were long, the air still. And for the first time in years, I felt light. I didn't have her pin. I had something better, the truth. The courtroom wasn't grand. No ornate woodwork, no dramatic lighting like in the movies. Just rows of tired benches, fluorescent, buzz, and the dry scent of old carpet. But for me, this room might as well have been a coliseum. Philip adjusted his tie beside me, tapping the folder on the table. Across from us, my mother sat with arms crossed, expression unreadable. My father stared at the floor. Callista scrolled through her phone like it was a dentist appointment. The judge, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and an unforgiving tone, called the hearing to order. I'd filed the petition quietly 2 weeks earlier. I knew they'd think it was a bluff, a scare tactic. They were wrong. Philip stood. Your Honor, we request that Exhibits A through E be admitted into the hearing record. No one objected, he continued, voice steady. Included in these exhibits are financial records regarding the Bar Harbor property, notarized evidence of signature fraud, and recordings relevant to exclusionary behavior surrounding the Caldwell Foundation's trust decisions. A rustle passed through the courtroom, but it wasn't until Exhibit D, Grandmother Elise's will, that the silence fractured. "The court will note," Philip said, placing a certified copy on the judge's bench. "This version predates the one currently in use. It names Emily Caldwell as the primary beneficiary of the Bar Harbor estate and any future inheritance from the Caldwell Trust." Callista's hand froze mid-scroll. My mother's head snapped toward me. My father's voice came out thin and shaky. "That version was never supposed to be..." The judge raised a hand. "Was it notarized and properly witnessed?" Philip didn't miss a beat. "Yes, ma'am, by the same legal team that handled the original estate division. They were replaced shortly after this document was filed." Everett tried again. "But we never meant for that to be the final..." The judge cut him off. "Intentions aren't law, Mr. Caldwell. Documents are." Callista leaned in toward our mother, whispering furiously. My mother didn't respond. Her face had gone stiff, but there was a flicker in her eye. Panic, maybe. Or worse, recognition. She had known this moment might come. I didn't look at her. I looked forward. Philip played the donor prep recording. "We only use Callista's face in marketing. The other one doesn't photograph well with our narrative." Mother's voice echoed through the speakers, then my father's. "We need to be careful what Emily finds. She used to read everything." The room was so still, I could hear a pen drop 2 rows behind me. Astria stood, almost hissing. "You ungrateful girl. You waited all this time just to destroy us." I stood too, voice calm. "I waited so I wouldn't destroy myself in the process." No one moved. For 5 full seconds, just silence. Then the judge cleared her throat. Her ruling was swift. "The Bar Harbor property shall revert to Miss Emily Caldwell. The Caldwell Trust's distributions will be frozen pending further audit tied in light of the evidence presented. The Foundation's tax filings are hereby referred to the State Attorney General for review." Callista bolted for the door. No words. My father stayed seated, pale, silent. My mother tried to regain composure, but her face betrayed her. The woman who built a world on perception had just watched it unravel. On public record. Philip sat back. Beside me. "You okay?" he whispered. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked down at my coat's lapel. The pin I once wanted, the one my mother wore to all those galas, wasn't there. But I didn't need it. The judge's words still echoed in my ears. "Miss Caldwell, the rightful heir." They took the pin. I kept the name. 6 months later, I stood barefoot in the center of a sunlit room that didn't exist the last time my parents said my name. It was modest, a renovated space from what used to be an old municipal library just outside Providence. I'd helped fund its transformation into a literacy and arts center for foster teens, young people who, like me, had once felt invisible in rooms where their presence was either ignored or erased. The event that day wasn't grand. No red carpets. No flashbulbs, just mismatched folding chairs, a table of cupcakes, and kids flipping through sketchbooks they'd filled themselves. But it was mine, every bit of it, and more importantly, it was theirs too. The plaque mounted in the entryway was one of the few things I insisted on keeping formal. It read, "In memory of Elise Caldwell." For the granddaughters they erased, and the ones who refused to stay erased. I caught myself tracing my fingers across the engraving. I hadn't visited her grave since the ruling. Not out of anger, but because I knew she would have preferred this. A quiet legacy, lived out loud. I hadn't returned to the family foundation. Not once. The court awarded me full legal custody of the Bar Harbor property and its inheritance funds. I could have sold it, burned it, started fresh. But I chose something else. I renovated it, turned it into a writer's retreat. For women from foster care backgrounds. The first 2 residents moved in last month. I donated part of the trust in grandmother Elise's name. No press release. No ribbon cutting, just a quiet wire transfer and a handwritten note to the director. Make sure it goes to those who were left out of the photos. Would you like this formatted into a screenplay or performance-ready script? My parents never reached out. Not once. Astria and Everett stayed silent, buried beneath layers of tax audits and board reconstructions. I read in a local newsletter that the foundation had temporarily suspended operations. That was the most I'd heard. Callista, though. She surprised me. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name. In her handwriting. Slanted. Sharp. Still the same. Inside was a single page. No flowery apology. Just 10 words. You were right. I'm sorry it took this to see it. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. I placed the letter in a small lockbox, next to the old graduation pin I once believed would make me feel like part of something. Neither held the weight they used to. But I kept them anyway, not as reminders of what I'd lost. But of what I'd learned. I didn't crave their table anymore. I had my own. And these days, I got to choose who sat with me. A little boy with a gap-toothed grin interrupted my thoughts. He held out a small paper craft. Folded, ribboned, glued with uneven lines and love. This is for you, he said. Because you showed up. I knelt to his level. You made this? He nodded. It's a badge. Like the ones grown-ups wear when they're important. I smiled. Tears threatened, but I held steady. Well, thank you. I think this might be the best one I've ever had. I pinned it onto my lapel, right over the place where the old Caldwell crest used to sit. The one I wore the day they disowned me. This one was better, softer, earned. The kids resumed their poetry readings, and I sat in the back row, not to be seen, not to prove a point, just to be there, to listen, to belong, on my own terms. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't about pretending none of it hurt. It's not even about setting people free. It's about releasing yourself from the endless, exhausting hope that one day they'll finally understand. Some wounds don't get stitched by words. Some just stop bleeding when you stop picking them. And for the first time in a long, long while, the silence around me didn't ache. It held me. It made room, and I chose it. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people who should have protected you, but healing doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward, on your own terms. Have you ever faced a moment like this, where walking away was the most powerful thing you could do? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want more real, powerful family drama, don't forget to subscribe. More stories like this are coming.